Right, so I wanted to make a video talking about the left's constantly wanting to raise the minimum wage. Usually it's to $15. And it's been done in some places in Canada, namely Alberta. Looks like Ontario's done it as well. I just kind of have a map here of what the current minimum wages are. Um, but the left always wants to, and I know it's big in the US too, is they want to raise the minimum wage to $15. And why they say they want to do it is to make it so people can afford to, live at a higher level, basically. But they fail to understand, obviously, basic economics, and that's not the real reason they want to do it. Well, it kind of is, but the real reason that they want to do it is because public schools and now more and more colleges aren't educating people well enough so that they can earn a decent wage to start out, or even like once they have more experience in the workforce, so that they don't have to be making 10, $11 or whatever some of these lower minimum wages are. But just starting out, um, looking at it from an economics perspective, we can't distribute more wealth that's created. So if we artificially paid someone, whatever it is, 15 or $20 an hour, what you're basically doing is you're giving people more wealth than they're creating, which isn't going to work out well in the long run. Um, and we cannot, in the long run, pay labor on average more than it produces. So if you have someone making $15 an hour, okay, if you have 1,000 people making $15 an hour who are only worth 10, 11, or 12, whatever number you want to call it, below 15, the business is going to have to make that money up, and that's money that they weren't having to make up before, right? They were paying them $10 an hour because they're producing $10 an hour. They're probably producing like 11 or 12, but wages are set by the market. They're not. The left seems to think that wages are an arbitrary thing that the boss up top says, like, yeah, I'm going to pay this guy that, I'm going to pay this guy that, and it's like, just a made up random number. Yes, there is probably some bosses that are grossly underpaying employees, but on average, if you want to be a successful business, especially a bigger business, you have to pay people what they're worth, because if you're paying them less than they're worth, then anybody with a brain would go to a different place, and they would, like, if you're worth $15 an hour working at, let's say, $10 an hour working at McDonald's, and you think you're worth $15 an hour, and let's say you actually are worth $15 an hour, maybe you're talented and skilled enough that you are worth that much, well, then you should be able to go to Wendy's or Burger King or some other fast food place and be like, yeah, I got the talent, I got the skills that you can pay me $15 an hour, and I'll make you more than that. And they would take you because you can make them money, right? But that's not what happens. Is the people, they're worth what they're getting paid on the overwhelming majority of cases, and the government wants them to make more, but they're not worth that much. So how you would fix this problem and not it just be an artificial fix, like just raising the minimum wage, is you need to increase the efficiency of production in a job. That's how you make more money, right? Like a car is worth more than a horse, right? Because a car is a lot more efficient than getting you places than a horse. Um, a computer that, I don't know my computers very well, but a computer that can do more stuff than like a cheap basic computer is worth more. Why? Because it can produce more, and it can do more things. It has more basically skills and talents than a cheaper computer, right? So someone that has a lot more education, a lot more work experience is going to make more on average than someone who doesn't. And in the past, a high school education could get you a middle class, what today would be like, I don't know, $70,000, $80,000 income. On a high school education, you could support a family of four or five, no problem. Nowadays, you can barely even do that if you got two people making, 50, 60, whatever your median income is. nowadays. And the reason for that is the government has wrecked the problem, or made the problem worse. Basically, they've artificially increased prices. The housing market's artificially increased. Um, the minimum wage has wrecked a lot of things. I know any employer will tell you in Canada that the minimum wage law, or in Alberta, I guess, basically in will tell you that the minimum wage laws has not helped them. It's either made them increase prices or lay off employees. And I know personally someone who employs about 20 people or so for a job that's basically all minimum wage workers, and they had to increase prices the year that Alberta brought in the minimum wage, and people would complain about it, and I would just look at people and be like, "Are you crazy?" Like, the big problem with all this, I guess, just getting to the end of it, is that people who support, I'm not, maybe the politicians don't. I think most of the politicians that propose these kind of things, they just do it more or less to get votes, namely like a Bernie Sanders or anyone. Basically, they understand it, but the everyday person who supports minimum wage laws like this, they don't understand they don't even understand the most basic of basic economics. The most basic of economics is supply and demand, and if you understood supply and demand, you wouldn't support a artificially high minimum wage, because artificially high minimum wage will lower the supply, because it'll cost more to produce stuff, and it's not because people are willing to pay or wanting to pay more from a free market perspective. It's because they're forced to pay more. But yeah, getting right into it, or sorry, finishing it out. The people who support this kind of stuff, they do it just basically because it's going to help them, and it's not really going to help anyone else. So it's more or less a me kind of thing. I only care about me. And if you do support this kind of stuff, it's because you're only looking at the just the individual people that would get the minimum wage increase. You're not looking at the people who'd be drove out of work because of the minimum wage. Employers can't afford to pay these people, some of the people, more. They're not looking at the fact that the cost of goods and services will go up, which will, again, it'll people gain in one area, but they lose in another area. That's the other thing too, is that minimum wage, it goes up. Employers, they cut hours, they increase prices. What happens to those people when they're going to buy goods and services? Well, guess what? They got to pay more. So they're not even really getting anywhere. And the problem is that what will happen is that it won't go anywhere. The problem won't be fixed, and the government will be like, and the people who support it will be like, oh, well, the problem didn't fix it. That must be because we didn't do it enough. We got to do it even more. It's the fallacy of socialism is that it doesn't work, and their solution isn't, oh, it doesn't work, maybe let's try the free market. It's, no, we got to double down and do it even more than how we just did it. So that's about the best way to put it. So that's all for this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.